Just imagine knowing that your really good friend is actually your brother. I'll leave that right there.
Welcome to Catch 22 Podcast. I'm Tashell.
And I am Dr. Chris.
Well, that's who you are today.
I guess.
Any other time, I'm
And
like, should I say doctor? No.
I'm just Chris. That's it. Just Chris.
Okay,
How are
just
you
Chris. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm great. You bright, colorful.
Well, thank you.
That's wonderful.
The goat.
The GOAT, I'm not ready to say who this has from yet.
Okay.
Maybe. Deserve it.
Okay.
All right.
Silly. We're not going to play no games with him today. We're going to jump right on into what we're talking about.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to jump right in because we need to get to talking. We have some good stuff to talk about.
All right.
All right, so today we are talking about childhood and its impact on our lives and our marriage. Yeah.
I mean, I think I like my childhood.
You did?
I think
Okay,
I loved
we
it.
gonna see.
I think I loved it.
Well, tell me about your childhood and what experiences you had in your childhood kind of shaped who you are that you feel like.
So I'm going back to my band camp days. Or
Okay.
I'm going back to my early days.
Gosh.
Just let me know.
What part shapes you the most, like out of that?
Man, so I had phases. I think I may have told you these stories before. I guess because of my childhood, it's a little bit, I'm not going to say different, but I've been raised, in a two-parent household, of course. And for years and years, I think that we kind of adapt and not adapt, we adopt things that our parents did growing up. So if we gonna fast forward about 50 years of where I am now, 51, like I am a true salesman. And I just remember growing up, and I think this was so unconscious of my mom. I don't think it was intentional, but my mama was the Avon lady. She was the Tupperware lady. She was the jeweler. I remember her just really being an entrepreneur, and I didn't know what entrepreneur was. And so I was the delivery. For Avon, I was the kid that dropped off the book at the front porch. I was the order taker, and I was also the distribution. I would deliver the products to the families. Tupperware. She would have these Tupperware parties. I didn't know. I just saw all these people, women, just coming to the house every week for a long time, not really truly understanding what my mom was doing. She didn't sit me down and say, "Hey, Chris, I want you to take a look at entrepreneurship. This is what it was." We would drive from Beaumont, Texas to Dallas, Texas once a month, and she would replenish her jewelry to sell it. And I just remember going around and watching her just solicit jewelry people were buying jewelry from her. I'm just like, looking back at it now, I'm like, I see why I get my entrepreneurialism.
Yes, you were raised by a hustler.
I was raised by a legit hustler. And so that as far as the entrepreneur in me, I'm definitely a derivative of her from that perspective, kind of the work ethic. Now, as a person, I've been trying to identify with somebody
Okay.
as a person.
What does that
growing
mean?
up.
What do you mean?
Well, it has been a journey for me, and just really, truly trying to understand my identity. I think we talked about it in the last episode.
Okay.
Just a tad bit, and I say, you just keep listening, you may hear it.
Yeah.
But just growing up, I was around a loving family for a long time. My dad's side of the family, really didn't know a lot about my mom's side of the family because, her story is, man, it's sad to even talk about it, but it's her story.
Yeah.
She realistically, became a foster kid. I was adopted by the grandmother that I grew up with. I mean, that I know. And just in general, it was, I just found out about the story, how my mom would eat, her and my aunt, one of my aunts, who's my godmother, they were eating leftover chicken grease.
That's
And they had to fend for themselves. And so I didn't know that side. Like
mm-hmm.
it was kind of, I'm not really telling it all, but the stories of them fending for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, Oklahoma. She was born in Oklahoma City, and I love my family that I know in parts of Oklahoma. I love them, and they love me. There was a whole lot of missing information that was
Got
going
you.
on, and I think the biggest thing is that me trying to find the identity of who I was through her, it wasn't just enough for me coming over time because, raised by my dad, who I'll say is realistically, that's the dad that I know, and that's the dad that raised me, but that's not my biological father. But it still has not been told to me.
And
So
that's
I'm
rough.
speaking of this publicly now. I've never been told by them that he wasn't my biological father. And I love him to death to this day. He was rough and tough, shaped me. But there was just there was a lot of disconnect growing up.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't, um, and the Williams side of the family, of course, he adopted me. Like I loved him. Like I didn't know anybody else.
Yeah.
My cousins, my aunts, my uncles, you couldn't tell me any different. You know what I mean? But there was still something missing. It was still something missing. Like I don't see myself in anybody. I don't. I didn't see myself in any one of them. I knew they loved me, but I didn't see myself. And so I just kind of kept that internally for years, years, years. And of course, was it 5, 6? No, no, 5 years ago. Maybe, probably about 8 years ago, or maybe 10 years. 8 years ago,
About 7 or 8 years ago.
I found out that my actual birth father was actually still alive. I had no idea. You know,
Yeah. And that was a journey in
that
finding
was
that.
that was a journey behind that of how it happened. And me hanging out with one of my good friends who ended up being my brother. That within itself. And I've been loving on my friend. Like that's my brother, but it's just imagine knowing that your really good friend is actually your brother. I'll leave that right there. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of bits and pieces of my childhood. I think as far as shaping who I am, I've learned to really find some identity. But in addition to that, the mental toughness,
Hmm.
the physical toughness. Every weekend, I always tell you the story about me going to my grandmother's house. I was
Yeah.
there. I was my grandmother's boy, and she really poured wisdom and she shaped me. And this is my mom's mom. She shaped me, and she lived down the street from the project. So I got a little bit of both. I'm not gonna ever attest that I lived in the project, so I grew up there on a daily basis. I couldn't give you a daily struggle or tell you what a daily struggle was because I wasn't there daily. But I was there every week.
Yeah.
I was there every week. And every week I had to get in fights because I was the boy from the burbs, and all of them knew me, and my cousins were right there rooting it on. But it made me tougher, and that is where as we say today, a little street cred. But I became a true, like, I became stronger in that space, and to this day, everybody that grew up with, like, we still friends. I can go back
Yeah.
home, and some have perished, but we still good friends. So just those little nuances have really shaped my childhood, me kind of who I am today, me learning who I am.
Hmm.
So, but what about yourself?
Well, first of all, did y'all hear him talking? I let him talk, y'all, because I'm like, Okay, tell the people. Tell the people. I love it. I'll talk about, I guess, navigating that space with you a little later. When it comes to my childhood, I was born Tashell Laquita Harris. I know it's gonna look at me.
Laquita.
So I changed my last name to I changed my middle name to my last name when I got married. So I'm no longer Tashell Laquita. But I was born Tashell Laquita Harris. And I think when I was 2 or 3, my parents were married and they divorced. And then my mom remarried and her husband adopted me. So when I think of childhood and how it shaped everything that happens in childhood when it shapes you, I always think of that because from jump, feeling like, okay, my dad signed over parental rights to me as a child. Somebody didn't want me from jump, just from a child's perspective. And that created an insecurity in me of what's in me that's not worthy of love. And so my mom went on to have other children. So I was the one in the home that didn't identify with anybody too. I couldn't see my mom in me. When I looked at her, I couldn't be like, oh, people said I kind of favor my mom, but I know. I didn't see it then though. I didn't see it then. But so that's the space that I was in growing up at home. And so how that shaped me was always feeling like I wasn't enough or worthy of love. It's not now. I look back and I have a totally different perspective, which I'll wrap that part up later. But the fun times of growing up for me was going to my grandmother's house. See, we're together for a reason. We have like a very similar background. Both the oldest, both were adopted, and the rest of the children in the home were from the father of the home, and not really addressed of how that could have affected us. It's like, let's not make a big deal out of it. Let's just kind of like not hide it or put it under the rug, but not really address how that would affect us. Right. Because as long as you have that, they felt like they were giving the love and they were providing, then that was that. But for me, a big part of my childhood was going to church at my grandmother's house. My grandmother took me to church. That's when I became a Christian. I became saved at a very young age in the Methodist church. And then going to church with LaDonna, Maud. That's when I got a taste of the Baptist church, the shouting and the choir singing loud and the tambourines and stuff like that. So I was always in church after that. I love church. That was my happy place. They found things in me, or they brought out things in me that I didn't know. Right. Meaning, oh, you can sing. Put you in the choir. Oh, you can act. You need to be in this play. So I felt like they saw me when I really didn't feel seen at home. And of course, I look at it from a child's perspective when I express these things. But as an adult, I probably look at it differently. But I just think that the need to be seen and accepted for who I was started with home, because everything that was said to me, typically, it was not uplifting. It was about what I wasn't doing. I was getting in trouble for something I didn't do. Yeah, it's like, oh, you only go to church because the boys are there. It was nothing positive that was said to me. And now knowing who I am today, words of affirmation are huge for me. So I think that I felt unloved just because I didn't hear the words, I love you, or I didn't hear positive affirmation from my parents or anybody around me, but my grandmother, and that's why I loved her so much. And it was simple, but I heard something that was positive. Right. So I felt like that's what truly shaped me into this adult space of being married. That's affected me not feeling worthy of love sometimes, not feeling like I'm enough just being who I am. Kind of like searching for that. So I felt like.
But do you feel that that word had to be said? Is it verbal, or is there action? Is it either or, is it both?
I think it's both for me. Actually, I took the Tashell, the love language test, and I'm all of them. I'm high in all of them. Yes, I am the special creature that needs all of them. And I've taken it multiple times thinking maybe I was just a little off when I took it, but that's just who I am. But I think I need both. I needed both. And I realized just not being told anything. I read something, I don't know where I read it, so I'm not going to quote it, but it said there's an inner voice that you develop as a child. And typically that inner voice is the voice of your parents. Somebody that was around you all the time. that told you something when you need to dig deep, where they're like, you can do this, you got this. And I never had that voice.
Right.
I didn't have anything to identify with that was positive, that helped me know who I was, or the good things about myself to look at and fall in love with. Does
Right.
that make sense? I never even heard that I was pretty. Growing up, I thought I was ugly because I needed braces. My teeth were crooked. I was skinny. You know, you was skinny too. You always tell me
Yeah,
your
my
pockets was touching each other.
pockets touched.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't hear anything about you're beautiful, you're smart, I always wondered and always wanted to be those things, not knowing that I already was.
But just think about that from a guy's perspective. When the, you really you don't you feel you handsome,
Mm.
right? But it's one thing when your parents say that. I can recall like when you go get our Easter suit for Easter. Oh, son, you look handsome. Thank you, mom. And that's probably as far as it went. But I will say, even in those moments back then, I don't know if I actually needed to hear the word love. I just needed
Mm.
to feel it. And how I knew it, my grandmother, I can never her I my mom's mom, I never could recall her ever saying it. Even my grandfather. I never recall they just showed me what it looked like.
Did they affirm you though? Did they say positive
Always,
things to you?
always, yeah, always. I
Yeah.
told you, she's my God. I tell you that
Yeah,
she's my
that's her
goddamn,
voice.
and I
Yeah,
hear her voice even to this day. And
exactly.
and my dad's parents, my other set of grandparents, like I love them like no, like it's a different kind of love. They're the love, because we come from a lineage of pastors, great greats and great and grandfather. It missed my daddy. God knows I'm so glad it missed him. But in fact, it missed him. But going back to your story, we going to church every day.
Hmm.
So yeah, I can sit up again. I can have these conversations and we can talk to our kids. But y'all don't remember what being in church is like.
All day.
Sunday morning, don't have 3 o'clock church, and then don't have
Seven,
BTU,
7 o'clock.
right? So that's 3 services in one day. Then you come back for mission on Monday.
Yeah.
You may take off for Tuesdays,
Then you
but
got prayer meeting and
but then
Bible study.
Bible study on Wednesdays, and don't be a musician or in the choir, because then you got choir rehearsal on either Friday or Saturday, and then you're back doing it again. And I was a musician. I played the drums, so I was always in choir rehearsal all the time with everybody. So I was a little church boy. I don't even know, but how I did it, and still was able to have a life too. But we went to church in Port Arthur, Texas. New Life Baptist Church is my church, and we lived in Beaumont. Now, it was close, but when you young, it seemed like, oh my God, we got to drive about 25, 30 minutes to get out. And you
Absolutely.
living in Houston,
That's nothing.
it's nothing, right? So I take all those moments, and those moments I really do cherish. And just growing up in those times, I started to identify, but like I said, it was always still something that was
I'm
missing.
missing. So, do you think, I feel like how that affects our marriage is a big deal, at least from the beginning. I think that affected our marriage of you feeling like something was missing, and then me feeling like, well, if my mom doesn't love me, who else would?
Mhm.
Feeling unloved by her, and then not having my biological father in my life. He left me. He didn't love me either. These are just things that I'm bringing forth as a child from that perspective, but into our marriage, because I feel like so much of who we are as adults is just really unlearning a lot of things and healing from childhood.
Right.
And so I think that with me, just never believing that I was enough and trying to be perfect is something that I brought into adulthood. I don't know if I brought it necessarily into our marriage, but I know I brought it into adulthood for a long time. But I can think of something that also shaped me in childhood was the lack of communication. I didn't see conflict handled in a good way. I didn't see it handled at all. Meaning I would maybe hear the back talk or the talk behind the scenes, but never see a healthy conversation of conflict happen and then everybody come back together. If there was a disagreement, it was, oh, we not talking to them. The cutoff of people.
Right.
And so growing up, how that shaped me and even into our marriage is when things got tough or there's some type of disagreement, I'm gone. Like, we disagreeing? Oh no, this shouldn't be.
Right.
This must be wrong. Something's
Right.
not right about it. And so that's something I had to learn to deal with and find a healthier way to deal with it, I would say, because conflict is inevitable. God made us all different. We think differently. Our perspectives come from our experiences of life.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't have to be a, let me put on my track shoes and run, but let's sit down and talk about it. Let's come to a resolution. Let's compromise on some things. And let's find out what the real
Right.
problem is. What's the real root of the problem? And so for me, that like created a lot of havoc in my life, just not knowing how to deal with conflict
Right.
in a positive way, how to do relationships, period, in a positive way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I didn't even know conflict existed because I
Mm.
never saw my mom, and if they did, it wasn't in front of us.
Yeah.
And only time I would see disagreements is when it was time for punishments. Like,
Oh,
no, don't. That's too much. And well, he needs to. That's too much. And so that's the really the only time that I ever really saw conflict. But again, I was young,
mm-hmm.
so I can't say it wasn't there, but it never was like put into my face. I never saw my dad, and he never touched my mama inappropriately or
I was about to say,
anything
like,
like.
he never touched her like that. Like,
Not like, well, I mean, he didn't put that back or front hand on the and respectfully, but again, it goes back to what I said earlier. We're creatures of habit, so things that we see, we think is it's kind of like that's the way it's supposed to be. So I really pray for a lot of men and who physically abuse. I pray a lot for women who takes abuse because that's probably what they saw, and guys
and
who
vice
do that
versa.
and vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so again, because we're creatures of habit, and so I really believe, and I'm so glad that even in our own household, we're trying to evolutionize the way that we were raised.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that we're taking things away, we're just making it more appropriate for this day and time.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you what, if either one of these kids decide they want to act a donkey, we'll go to commercial break on that one. All right. But anyway, but no, we do. I think we love on them totally different. And I just want to just be clear on just how we move in our household. It didn't look like mine. Does it look like yours?
No,
Is that a good or bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. I think with every generation, there should be change. Things should be
No,
better.
you say every generation.
Well, every time that, yeah, every time you,
child.
yeah, I think that it doesn't have to look identical. I believe that it should be something foundational that's carried, that's positive. What is it that you truly want your legacy to be? I think people think legacy, they think more so financially. And I don't think financially always with legacy or wealth and stuff like that. For me, I think, of course, I've discussed this with you. Legacy that I want my children to pass on is the fact that they are believers. That's something I want passed on in my family because that means the most, in my opinion. Because if that's your foundation, everything else, it'll be successful if you have that source in your life as number one. But no, I think the way we communicate is different. The way we embrace, the way our kids are open to be who they are versus I didn't think I was open to be who I was and be accepted and loved for that. So I didn't express myself. I was silenced, I felt like. They may not have done it on purpose because they only did what they knew to do.
Right.
But I felt like I couldn't be me. But I could be me other places, but not in my home.
Right.
And so with our kids, I want home to be the place where they feel the most love and the most accepted because the world is not a nice place, typically. And so with you and I know we've had to find our way and we were searching. That's why and if you watched the last episode, overcoming people pleasers because we were looking for that love and acceptance that we didn't get at home. We were looking for it out in the world.
Right.
And that was a very rough road. But I would think our level of communication has definitely improved because Chris and I would not talk about something because it was something that was in our childhood that didn't make us feel safe to
Yeah,
talk and express. So it has affected our marriage in the way that we've communicated sometimes. And I'm like, you're not there anymore. Like, you can tell me what you think. I'm not gonna, just
right.
because I don't agree doesn't mean I'm rejecting you. So the thing of always feeling rejected as a child, we will run for the hills before we put ourselves in position to be rejected from each other. And so that was something that we had to always talk through. Like, I'm not rejecting you. I'm not rejecting you.
Right.
But I have to be free to express myself. And just because it's not in alignment or in agreement with what you feel, don't be rejected. So that's something that our childhood has definitely poured into us. And I think for something else that I'm thinking about, I went to high school at Second Baptist and I was the first African American to ever attend the school. That part. Chris has a similar situation, maybe not the first African American, but very diverse, in which he was one of the few, right? So the strength of going through something like that and us kind of like being unique and out of the box.
Right.
We share
I had a
that.
mixture, yeah.
Yeah, we
My
share
friends,
that.
I had a mixture of friends. Like growing up, child, my best friend was a Hispanic white kid.
Mm-hmm.
James, love him to this day. Lives in Austin. We chat social media wise. Again, yeah, we like super diverse background.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew how to navigate in both places.
Yes, we both do, which is
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
I think that brought something really nice to our marriage because some of the places that Chris has taken me, if I didn't have that, we probably wouldn't have made it. But I think it's fun. It's interesting. I love diversity. I love all different types of people. And that has been, like I said, a great asset to us. What is something else that you feel like being with me, knowing that I had this missing piece, and I'll reflect on you, that I had this missing piece of longing for a father figure or a close relationship with a father figure, because that's not what I had growing up. How did that feel for you being in marriage with me or choosing me or being in marriage? However you want to answer that.
Looking at it, it's hindsight now, but looking at it now, I was trying to figure out always, what did I do?
Mm.
What did I say? What did I do? I don't think this is, and well, what I came to realize is that there was a lot of things that was missing from the relationship between you and your father. And I had to come and fill in that gap. Not that that's what you said I needed to do, but that is kind of what I felt. And whatever I did, it just felt like it wasn't enough. No matter what I said, no matter what I did, it just like, hell, there's, what are we doing? Like, so it was just really, I was super confused. Like really, really, really confused. But again, time heals, and time will. It just really. Oh, okay. Now I get it. But you have to stay in the fight in order to really get to the end of the bout. You got to stay in the fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
If you just gonna give up and quit, then you lose,
yeah,
right? And every time that we said we were, it's over.
yeah.
Well,
I said,
yeah, when she said,
yeah, he never
I was
said
the
he
one
would
that
never let me
basically,
leave.
I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's not what God said.
And I'm like, okay.
And then what would end up happening to you?
Yeah, something would happen. Either an unexpected pregnancy or a sickness. Something would happen that would make me sit my butt down and I say, okay, I stopped trying.
That's that power.
I stopped trying to leave at that point. I was like, obviously God want me to stay, so let me just be quiet and stay and get closer to him. But I want to speak on the fact of you and your identity. That was huge. For me, I knew immediately you were searching for something by how you would change about what you wanted to do with career. Oh, you would just jump around. And I just was like, what is he searching for? What is he looking for? And so I would pray and ask God to just show you how to identify who you are in Him.
Right.
Because I think we all can go through something as far as identity missing in someone, but ultimately we all should find identity in who we are in Christ,
Right.
you know? So I'm glad that for us, and you can definitely interject when it comes to the things that we've talked about or that we've been through in our childhood that we needed to heal from. I think that talking through it, healing through it, not healing through it, going to counseling because we've been to counseling. I think
Right.
you went a little bit more than me individually, and we have gone to marriage counseling a couple
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
That helped a lot. Praying, truly just asking God to heal me individually, because I know in marriage, when we have issues and conflict, it's typically like, well, help him or heal him, but it was more so heal me.
Right.
For me, that's what I did because I just was unhealed and not understanding, and then just letting God truly be my everything. I think that took away a lot of expectation that I had of people, because when God fulfilled me, I had no expectation of anybody else to do anything. I focused on how I showed up for people versus how they showed up for me. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I just pray for peace so I could be peaceful. I think I learned that early on. There's a whole nother part of this story that I haven't talked about in my adulthood, right? But I basically gained peace with myself, and once I was able to identify with who I was, where I come from, and then at that moment I was able to start healing. But granted, nobody knew what I was dealing, what I was feeling, because I was emotionless. I was considered a cry, and I just really was just kind of hanging in here, just happy with whatever went on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of you brought out some things today, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. We always have to check in.
Absolutely. Well, our check-in today is just giving some inspiration on what we talked about. I enjoyed the talk. I'm glad that you opened up the way that you did,
A little bit.
because I was like, oh, I wonder how he's going to open up on this one. I was sitting here like, I don't know if y'all saw me and I wasn't holding my breath, but I was just taking your lead on it because I know those are some sensitive topics
Yeah,
that
it
you were
is.
going to share today. I hope that it helps somebody else. But what we want to do is give you some advice on how we feel like you can heal from your childhood. So many things come from childhood, right? Everything, it seems like it was so big, or childhood is so big. So my advice would be just to heal, give your parents grace and mercy. They did the best that they could. That's my disclaimer. I love you, parents. This is not to speak negative on y'all, and Chris feels the same. But we just want to share our story to help other people. But definitely give your parents grace and mercy. They gave you the best that they have. If you're an adult watching this, it's up to you to become what you want to become, to get your healing, whether that be through more prayer, through counseling, through talking it out. Whatever way that God leads you to do it is your responsibility, and it can be done.
We're not blaming parents for
Yeah, you're
anything.
not
No,
doing
we're
that. We're
not
just
doing
sharing
that.
our story.
We're just basically just looking at how that's what they knew. And that's okay because we're adult enough to be what I respect my dad for what he did. It
Hmm.
shaped me,
Yeah.
made me tougher, right? Not saying that I would do that in more to our son, but it made me a tougher guy. And the things that we experience with our parents, I mean, that's only a part of the journey. They're here to push you to the next phase of your life, and hopefully, you find peace with that. Find peace with your parents. Find peace, inner peace within yourself. I even have on my good old shirt today. I am a peacemaker.
Come on, peacemaker.
Shout out to the We Society out of Atlanta. Uh, Definitely appreciate the gear. WeSociety.co actually is the website. So if y'all in Atlanta or online, just check them out. But this is truly, I like to wear these shirts of affirmations because they truly signify who I am. I think episode one, I want to trust God.
Hmm.
Like, yes, you need to do that. So I just offer those words of encouragement. Hopefully there's only small words, but hopefully they're enough to fulfill you for the day. Anything else, Mom?
Nothing, baby.
All right, so we really appreciate everybody just chiming in and watching the Catch 22 podcast with Chris and Tashell. We just we love on y'all, and this is we're just speaking our truth and just telling our story and our journey. But we got a lot of great, interesting things that are coming up here in the future.
All I got for you is stay tuned to the next episode. It's going to be epic.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Catch 22 podcast featuring Chris and Tashell.
We really hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you felt empowered, inspired, and connected to our journey in some type of way. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next one. And remember to tell your story because it definitely changes lives.